What if the best copywriter of 2026 was a guy who died before ChatGPT existed? Dan Kennedy passed in 2024, but his direct response framework is now reverse engineered into every major AI prompt system on the planet. And here is what should terrify every modern marketer: he is still outconverting all of them. This video breaks down exactly why a print-era salesman from Cleveland built a persuasion machine that no algorithm has matched. Stay for the ending, because it will change how you think about copy forever. Before we go further, let us be clear about who Dan Kennedy actually was. He was not a guru. He was not a thought leader. He was a direct response copywriter and consultant with one obsession: making a sales letter produce a measurable, trackable, bankable result. While Madison Avenue was busy winning awards for charming ads that did not sell anything, Kennedy was quietly building campaigns for thousands of small business owners who could not afford to waste a single dollar. His clients ranged from martial arts studios to financial advisors, and his method worked identically for all of them. Every legendary framework comes from a moment when a practitioner had no choice but to solve a real problem. Kennedy's was born in the late 1970s, in the middle of the golden age of print advertising. And to understand why his method still works in 2026, you have to understand the world that forged it. This was a time when a single magazine ad had one job: get a reader to stop mid-page, read 3 paragraphs of body copy, then clip a coupon or write a check. There was no retargeting. There was no algorithm rescue. The headline either worked or the client went under. The constraints of print advertising were absolutely brutal. A Kennedy client would come to him with a magazine insertion order, a single page, and a deadline. That page had to outperform every other page in the publication, including the ones from billion-dollar brands with massive creative budgets. Kennedy's answer was never to be clever. His answer was to be ruthlessly specific. He treated every sentence like it cost the reader $1 to read, and if the sentence did not earn its place by moving the prospect toward a decision, it got cut. That discipline, the discipline of earning every word, is what most modern marketing has completely lost. Here is the core principle that makes Kennedy's framework convert in any medium, any industry, any year. The copy does not start with the product. It does not start with the company. It does not start with the offer. It starts with the reader's reality. Kennedy's famous dictum was that every sentence must either serve the reader's journey from problem to solution, or it gets deleted. That sounds simple, but almost nobody actually does it. Most marketing copy is secretly a product description wearing the costume of a conversation, and readers can feel the difference within the first 3 seconds. The psychological mechanism behind the Kennedy framework is something neuroscience has since confirmed, but he understood it intuitively decades earlier. People do not make decisions based on logic alone. They make decisions based on emotion, and then they use logic to justify what they already wanted to do. Kennedy's copy is engineered around that reality. It works with how the brain actually decides, instead of fighting it the way most corporate marketing does. The first half of a Kennedy sales letter creates an emotional shift, usually fear, aspiration, or relief, and only then does the logic arrive to give the reader permission to act. Let me show you what an emotional shift actually looks like inside a Kennedy-style sales letter. He would open with a scene, a real, specific, almost cinematic description of the reader's pain. Not, do you struggle with marketing? Something like, you spent 8 hours writing a sales email, hit send to 200 people, and watched exactly 2 people open it. Your stomach dropped. That kind of opening does something a feature list never can. It makes the reader feel seen. And the moment a reader feels seen, the psychological resistance to being sold to drops by half. The sale has not even started yet, and you have already won half of it. Once Kennedy has the reader emotionally engaged, the second half of the letter arrives, and this is where most copywriters completely fumble. The logic is not there to convince the reader. The logic is there to give the reader permission to act on what they already feel. Kennedy called this bulletproofing the decision. He would stack testimonials, case studies, specific numbers, and risk reversal guarantees so that when the reader's rational brain woke up and asked, "Is this legitimate?" the answer was already yes. The sale was made in the first 3 paragraphs. Everything after that just removes the friction. There is one word that shows up more than any other when you study Kennedy's work, and that word is specific. Generic applications produce generic results. That is not a slogan, that is a law of direct response. Kennedy never wrote "Our customers love us." He wrote Helen P. from Dayton, Ohio, used the system for 11 weeks and added $19,000 to her practice. That level of specificity does 3 things at once. It builds credibility, it creates believability, and most importantly, it lets the reader project themselves into the story. Specificity is the single most copyable technique in the entire Kennedy playbook. Now here is where this gets interesting, because we are in 2026 and the medium has completely changed. The Kennedy framework is not bound to print, to email, to Facebook ads, or to YouTube. It is bound to how people actually make decisions, and that has not changed in 50,000 years of human evolution. The principles are timeless. The application evolves. In 2026, that means you have to understand your reader's actual search intent before you write a single sentence. It means you have to address their specific objections with real evidence, not vague reassurance. And it means social proof has to be authentic, not manufactured urgency that readers can smell a mile away. Let me be precise about what I mean by search intent in 2026. If someone lands on your advertorial or your sales page, they are not there by accident. They typed something, they clicked something, they made a micro commitment before they ever saw your headline. Kennedy's framework in 2026 begins the moment that micro commitment happens. Your opening line has to mirror the promise that brought them in. If they search for how to fix my lower back pain, your first sentence had better be about lower back pain. Any drift to your credentials, your company story, your clever analogy is drift away from the sale. Here is a Kennedy principle that AI tools are finally starting to grasp but still execute badly. Objections are not obstacles to overcome, they are fuel. Every objection a reader has is an opportunity to deliver evidence that removes a specific reason not to buy. Kennedy would map out the top 7 or 8 objections a prospect carried into the sales letter, and he would answer each one with concrete proof. Not "we have great customer service." Something like, "if you call our office between 9 and 5 Eastern, a human being picks up before the 3rd ring, or your month is free." That kind of answer is a Kennedy signature, and it works in 2026 exactly as well as it did in 1986. Authentic social proof is the area where most modern marketers have completely lost the plot. Kennedy never relied on testimonials that read like they were written by a focus group. He used specifics, he used verifiable numbers, he used names, dates, locations. In 2026, this matters more than ever because readers have been trained by a decade of fake reviews and manufactured urgency to distrust anything vague. Real Kennedy-style social proof in 2026 looks like screenshots of actual Stripe transactions, dated case studies, video testimonials with real faces, and outcomes precise enough to be falsifiable. The standard is not looks believable, the standard is verifiable. Here is the single biggest mistake practitioners make when they try to apply the Kennedy framework. They treat it like a template. They find a famous Kennedy sales letter, copy the structure, fill in the blanks with their own product details, and wonder why it does not convert. This is the equivalent of memorizing the periodic table and calling yourself a chemist. The framework is not a fill-in-the-blanks form. It is a way of thinking about the reader. You have to internalize the principle. Every sentence must serve the reader's journey, and then generate every word from that principle inside the specific context of your market, your offer, and your reader. What you are looking at here is essentially a complete blueprint. First, you identify the reader's exact situation, not their demographic, their literal waking moment of pain or desire. Second, you open with a scene that makes them feel seen. Third, you create an emotional shift by amplifying the cost of inaction. Fourth, you introduce the mechanism, the unique way your solution works, and you do it in plain language. Fifth, you bulletproof the decision with specifics, proof, and a risk reversal. Sixth, you close with a single, clear, unmistakable call to action. That is the entire architecture. 6 moves. Every legendary Kennedy sales letter fits inside it. This is also why the AI prompt engineers you keep hearing about in 2026 are quietly studying Dan Kennedy. The major language models are trained on the open internet, and the internet is full of Kennedy's sales letters, his magnetic marketing system, his NOBS, newsletters, and decades of his consulting transcripts. The patterns are baked in. The most sophisticated AI copy tools in 2026 are essentially Kennedy frameworks running on transformer architecture. They know the structure. The remaining challenge, and it is a real one, is that they still occasionally produce generic output. The human edge in 2026 is the same edge Kennedy had in 1986, the ability to be ruthlessly specific to a single reader at a single moment. Which brings me to the part of this story that is not in most Dan Kennedy retrospectives. Advertorial Wizard is one of the AI-powered platforms that has actually studied the Kennedy framework at a structural level, and the tool generates complete advertorials, sales letters, and email sequences using exactly the 6-move architecture I just walked you through. It handles the reader's reality, the emotional shift, the mechanism, the proof, and the call to action, and it does it in minutes instead of weeks. The point is not that AI replaces a great copywriter. The point is that the Kennedy framework is now executable at scale by anyone in any niche. Underneath all of the structure, all of the bullet points, all of the risk reversals, there is one final Kennedy principle that explains why the framework has survived half a century. It respects the reader. It treats the reader as an intelligent adult who is capable of making a decision when given real information. It does not manipulate. It does not trick. It educates, it entertains, and it converts in that order. Most modern marketing does the opposite. It insults the reader, then wonders why the conversion rate is in the basement. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember that. The Kennedy framework works because it treats the buyer like a person, not a target.